The buzzards were already circling when I heard the first whisper. 3 children huddled around my water well like broken scarecrows, their lips cracked and bleeding, fingers clawing at strips of mesquite bark. The desert sun had baked their skin to leather, and their clothes hung in tatters that barely covered bones sharp enough to cut glass. But it was their eyes that stopped my heart cold, hollow, glassy, staring at something I couldn't see. "We're angels now," the smallest one whispered. A girl maybe 6 years old with matted blonde hair. "We're angels now, we're angels now." The other 2 nodded, chanting the same words like a prayer. A boy around 10 with a face gaunt as a skull. Another girl, older, maybe 14, who should have been the leader but sat rocking back and forth like her mind had snapped clean in two. I dropped my rifle and ran. The heat hit me like a furnace blast, but these children were dying right here on my land, not 50 yards from my cabin. Their skin burned fever hot to the touch, but they shivered like it was winter. When I tried to pull the bark from their mouths, they fought me with desperate strength. "No," the oldest girl hissed. "We have to eat. We have to become angels before he finds us." "Before who finds you?" I wanted to ask. But there wasn't time for questions. These children would be dead within the hour if I didn't act fast. I scooped up the smallest girl. She weighed nothing, just hollow bones and burning skin, and started toward my cabin. The other 2 followed, stumbling and whispering their angel prayer. Inside, I laid them on my floor and reached for my water bucket. The oldest girl grabbed my wrist with fingers like iron clamps. Her eyes locked onto mine, and what I saw there made my blood freeze. Not just hunger, not just fear. Something else. Something that looked like guilt. "Mister," she whispered, her voice cracking like old leather, "don't let him take us back, promise me. When he comes, and he will come, don't let him take us back to hell." I stared at her, my mind racing. These weren't just lost children. They were running from something, or someone, and whoever it was, they feared him more than death itself. The little blonde girl started convulsing. Foam bubbled from her lips, and her back arched off the floor like something was trying to crawl out of her spine. The boy joined in, his eyes rolling back until only the whites showed. Then the oldest girl, still gripping my wrist, her nails digging into my flesh. "We're angels now," they chanted in unison, their voices rising to a shriek that made my cabin walls shake. "We're angels now, we're angels now." I'd seen men die from desert fever. I'd seen women lose their minds from isolation. But I'd never seen anything like this. These children were burning up from the inside, consumed by something that went deeper than hunger or thirst. They were trying to die, trying to become angels before someone dragged them back to whatever hell they'd escaped from. The convulsions stopped as suddenly as they'd started. All 3 children lay still, their breathing shallow but steady. The oldest girl's grip on my wrist loosened, but her eyes never left mine. "He'll come at sunset," she whispered. "He always comes at sunset. That's when the devil likes to collect his due." Outside, my horses started screaming. Not whinnying, screaming, like they'd caught scent of something that made their blood run cold. I grabbed my rifle and moved to the window, keeping low. The desert stretched empty in every direction, shimmering with heat waves that made the horizon dance. But something was out there. Something that had my animals spooked worse than a rattlesnake convention. The little girl sat up, her movements jerky like a broken marionette. She pointed toward the window with one skeletal finger. "He's coming," she said in a voice that didn't belong to any 6-year-old. "The man with no shadow. He's coming to take his angels home." I pressed my face to the glass, scanning the wasteland. Nothing. Just heat and sand and the eternal blue sky that stretched from here to Judgment Day. But my horses kept screaming, and somewhere in the distance I heard the sound of hoofbeats, lots of them, coming fast. But this story begins 3 days earlier, when I first saw smoke rising from the direction of Bent Creek Settlement, and made the worst decision of my life. I should have minded my own business. That's what 20 years of hermit living teaches a man. Keep your head down, your powder dry and your nose out of other people's troubles. But that column of black smoke rising from Bent Creek had been burning for 2 days straight, and the wind kept carrying the smell of death across the desert. So I'd saddled up and ridden the 15 miles to see what remained of the settlement I'd helped build back, when I still believed in community and Christian charity. What I found made me wish I'd stayed home. Bent Creek was gone. Not just burned, obliterated. Every building reduced to charcoal and ash, every well poisoned with bodies, every living thing slaughtered down to the last chicken. The attack had been methodical, professional. This wasn't Apache work or common banditry, this was extermination. I was picking through the ruins of the church when I heard crying. Soft, muffled sobs coming from beneath the collapsed altar. I dug through the debris with my bare hands until I found a root cellar, and inside 3 children clinging to each other like the last survivors of Noah's flood. The oldest girl looked up at me with eyes that had seen too much. "Are you one of his men?" she asked. "Whose men?" "The man who burned our town, the man who killed everyone." I helped them out of that hellhole, gave them water from my canteen, shared what jerky I had in my saddlebags. The boy, his name was Thomas, had a bullet graze across his shoulder. The little girl, Mary, wouldn't stop shaking. But it was the oldest one, Sarah, who worried me most. She kept looking over her shoulder like something was following us. "We can't go back to town," she said when I suggested taking them to Millerville. "He'll find us there. He finds everyone eventually." "Who's this he you keep talking about?" Sarah's face went white as church paint. "My father." That's when the pieces started falling into place. Sarah McKenna. I'd seen her face on wanted posters throughout the territory. Missing daughter of Jeremiah McKenna, the cattle baron who owned half of Arizona territory and wanted the other half. The posters offered a $1,000 reward for her safe return. No questions asked. But sitting there in the ruins of Bent Creek looking at the terror in this girl's eyes, I understood why she'd run, and why someone had burned an entire settlement to find her. "He killed them all," Sarah whispered. "Everyone who helped us, everyone who knew where we were hiding. Mrs. Patterson who gave us bread, Old Man Jenkins who let us sleep in his barn, the Reverend who said we could stay as long as we needed. Your own father did this?" "Jeremiah McKenna ain't my father," she spat. "A father don't do what he did to me, what he tried to do to Mary and Thomas here." I didn't ask for details, didn't need to. The way she protected those younger children, the way they looked at her like she was their salvation, I could read the story in their faces. We'd ridden hard for my cabin, the children sharing my horse while I walked alongside. They were already showing signs of desert sickness by the time we arrived. The fever, the delirium, the way they kept whispering about becoming angels, I thought it was just exposure and exhaustion. I was wrong. Now, 3 days later, with those hoofbeats getting closer, and my horses screaming like the world was ending, I understood what I'd gotten myself into. Jeremiah McKenna wasn't just looking for his runaway daughter. He was hunting prey that had embarrassed him, cost him face in front of the other cattle barons, and men like McKenna don't forgive that kind of slight. Sarah sat up on my floor, her fever-bright eyes fixed on the window. "How many men does he have with him?" I listened to the approaching hoofbeats. "Sounds like a dozen, maybe more." "He brought the Hell Riders," Thomas whispered. "His personal army. They don't take prisoners." Little Mary started crying, but no tears came. She was too dehydrated. "I don't want to go back to the bad place. I don't want him to touch me again." My blood turned to ice water. Whatever Jeremiah McKenna was, whatever he'd done to these children, it was evil enough to make them choose death over return. They'd rather eat bark and die as angels than live as his victims. The hoofbeat stopped just outside my property line. Through the window I saw dust clouds settling in the distance. They were here, waiting, watching. "Why don't they just ride up?" I asked. Sarah's laugh was bitter as alkali water. "Because he likes the game. He likes the fear. He'll wait until sunset, let us think about what's coming. Then he'll make his offer." "What offer?" "He'll promise to let you live if you hand us over. He'll promise gold, land, whatever men like you want most. He's got a voice like honey and a smile that could charm the devil himself." I checked my rifle, counted my ammunition. 23 rounds. Against a dozen professional killers, that wouldn't last long. but I'd held worse positions during the war, faced longer odds. "There's something else," Sarah said quietly. "Something I ain't told you yet." I turned to look at her, and the expression on her face made my skin crawl. "The fever we got, the reason we keep talking about angels, it ain't from the desert. It's from the poison." "What poison?" "The poison he fed us before we escaped. Said if we ever tried to run, we'd die slow and painful. Said the only way to stop the pain was to come home and beg his forgiveness." The sun was starting its descent toward the western mountains, painting the sky blood red. Outside, I heard a voice calling across the desert, smooth as silk, friendly as Sunday service. "Ezra Blackwood, I know you're in there, old friend. Let's have ourselves a civilized conversation." Jeremiah McKenna sat his black stallion like he owned the world, which in these parts, he pretty much did. Even from 100 yards away, I could see the gold teeth gleaming in his smile, the pearl-handled revolvers on his hips, the way he held himself like a king addressing peasants. Behind him, his Hell Riders spread out in a perfect semicircle, 12 men who'd kill their own mothers for the right price. "Ezra Blackwood," he called again, his voice carrying easy across the desert air. "You always were a hard man to find. Been looking for you since the war ended." I cracked the window open just enough to speak through. "What do you want, McKenna?" "Why, I want to thank you, old friend. You found my precious daughter and her little companions. Saved me considerable trouble tracking them down." Sarah crawled to my side, her face pale as death. "Don't listen to him," she whispered. "He's got a tongue like the devil himself." McKenna urged his horse forward a few steps. "Now, I know what you're thinking, Ezra. You're remembering all those stories you heard about me in town, wondering if there's truth to them. But let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a father who wouldn't move heaven and earth to bring his children home?" "These ain't your children," I called back. "They're your victims." His laugh rolled across the desert like thunder. "Is that what they told you? Poor Sarah always did have an active imagination. Gets it from her mother, God rest her soul." Through the window, I watched him dismount with fluid grace. He was a big man, broad-shouldered and barrel-chested, but he moved like a dancer. Everything about him was calculated to impress. The silver spurs, the embroidered vest, the way his hair caught the dying sunlight. "You know what I think happened here, Ezra? I think you found 3 sick children and took pity on them. That's the kind of man you always were, too kind for your own good. But they've been feeding you lies, poisoning your mind against their loving father." Thomas started shaking beside me. "He's lying. He's lying about everything." "I know, son," I whispered back. McKenna was close enough now that I could see his eyes, pale blue like chips of winter ice. "I'm prepared to be generous, Ezra. More than generous. You return my daughter and her friends and I'll give you $5,000. Cash money, enough to buy your own spread, hire your own men, live like a king instead of hiding out here like a hermit." The offer hung in the air like smoke. $5,000 was more money than I'd see in 10 lifetimes, enough to leave this godforsaken desert, start fresh somewhere green and cool. "And if I refuse?" His smile never wavered. "Then you'd be harbouring fugitives. Kidnapping, by some folks' reckoning. Sheriff Martinez down in Millerville is a close friend of mine. Reasonable man. Understands that sometimes justice needs a firm hand." Sarah grabbed my arm. "He owns the sheriff. Owns the judge too. Everyone in 3 counties either works for him or fears him." I studied McKenna through the window. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, the picture of paternal concern, but his Hell Riders had spread wider, moving to surround my cabin, professional killers getting into position. "Tell me something, McKenna," I called out. "If these children are so precious to you, why'd you poison them before they ran?" For the first time his smile flickered. Just for a second, but I caught it. "Now that's a hurtful accusation, Ezra. These children have been through terrible trauma. Desert fever, exposure, starvation. It's affected their minds, made them imagine things that never happened." Little Mary started convulsing again, her back arching off the floor. Foam bubbled from her lips as she whispered, "We're angels now! We're angels now!" "Look at her," I shouted. "Look what your poison is doing to them." McKenna's mask slipped completely then. The fatherly concern vanished, replaced by something cold and reptilian. "Those children belong to me, Blackwood. By law, by blood, by right of ownership. You've got 10 minutes to send them out, or I'll burn this place down around your ears." He remounted his stallion and rode back to his men. I watched them check their weapons, adjust their positions. They'd done this before, probably many times. "He'll keep his word about burning us out," Sarah said. "He burned down Bent Creek just to flush us into the open." I looked at the 3 children huddled on my floor. Sarah trying to be brave, Thomas fighting not to cry, little Mary lost in fevered delirium. They were dying anyway from whatever poison McKenna had fed them. The question was whether they'd die free or as his slaves. "There's something else you need to know," Sarah whispered, "about why we keep saying we're angels." "What about it?" "It ain't the fever talking, it ain't the poison neither." Her eyes locked onto mine, filled with desperate hope. "It's because we found something in that root cellar, something the Reverend hid before McKenna's men killed him." She reached into her tattered dress and pulled out a small leather pouch. Inside was a vial of clear liquid, no bigger than my thumb. "Holy water," she said. "Blessed by the bishop himself when he came through last spring. The Reverend said it could wash away any sin, cure any poison, if the person drinking it had faith enough." Thomas nodded weakly. "That's why we've been saying we're angels. We've been praying that if we die pure, if we die clean, maybe God will take us home instead of letting the devil have us." Outside, McKenna's voice boomed across the desert. 9 minutes, Blackwood." I stared at the vial in Sarah's hands. Holy water. Maybe it would work. Maybe it wouldn't. But these children believed, and sometimes belief was enough. The sun touched the western mountains, painting everything blood red. McKenna's men were in position, ready to storm my cabin. In 9 minutes, this place would become a slaughterhouse, unless I gave him what he wanted. 8 minutes, Blackwood! McKenna's voice cut through the desert air like a blade. I could see him checking his pocket watch, playing his game with the precision of a man who'd done this dance many times before. His Hell Riders had torches now, flames flickering in the dying light. Sarah pressed the vial of holy water into my palm. "If we don't make it, if he takes us back, promise me you'll tell people what kind of man he really is." "Nobody's taking you anywhere," I said, but even as the words left my mouth I knew they were likely lies. 12 armed men against 1 hermit with a rifle. The mathematics were brutal and simple. That's when I heard it. Hoofbeats, but not from McKenna's direction. From the north, riding hard across the hard pan. A single rider pushing his horse to the breaking point. McKenna heard it too. His head snapped around, and for the first time since he'd arrived, uncertainty flickered across his face. "Santos?" he barked to one of his men. "Who the hell is that?" The rider crested a low rise, and I got my first clear look at him. Tall man in a black duster, riding a paint horse that was lathered with sweat. He had a badge pinned to his vest that caught the last rays of sunlight. "Federal Marshal," I breathed. Sarah's eyes went wide. "That's Marshal Stone. He's been tracking McKenna for months looking for evidence." The Marshal reined up just outside rifle range, his hand resting easy on his gun butt. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of the United States government. "Jeremiah McKenna, you're under arrest for murder, kidnapping, and crimes against children." McKenna's laugh was like broken glass. "Marshal Stone. What a pleasant surprise. I'm afraid you've caught me in the middle of family business, just trying to bring my wayward daughter home. That girl ain't your daughter by blood, and we both know it. She's your ward, and you've been abusing her for years, same as you did her mother before you killed her." The temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Even McKenna's own men were looking uncomfortable now, shifting in their saddles. "Those are serious accusations, Marshal. I hope you've got proof to back them up." Stone smiled, thin and cold. "I got 3 witnesses who'll testify to what you did, plus the doctor's report on what happened to Sarah's mother. Funny thing about poison, it leaves traces in the body even after death." McKenna's composure cracked completely. "You dug up Ellen? You son of a bitch, you dug up my wife?" "Your victim, you mean? And yes, I did. Arsenic poisoning, just like those children are suffering from right now. Inside my cabin, Thomas started convulsing again. His back arched off the floor as he whispered his angel prayer. The poison was getting worse, eating them alive from the inside. 6 minutes, Blackwood, McKenna called, but his attention was split now between my cabin and the marshal. Stone urged his horse forward. Let me make this simple for you, McKenna. Release those children to my custody, and I'll let you surrender peaceful-like. Keep playing games, and I'll put you down like the rabid dog you are. 1 marshal against 12 of my men? McKenna's confidence was returning. I like those odds. Who said anything about 1 marshal? That's when the rest of them appeared. 6 more riders coming from different directions surrounding McKenna's position. Federal marshals, every one, with rifles trained and ready. McKenna's face went white as alkali dust. This is a setup. Damn right it is, Stone said. We've been tracking you for months, waiting for you to make a mistake. Burning down Bent Creek was that mistake. Too many witnesses, too much evidence left behind. Sarah grabbed my arm. He's trapped. For the first time in his life, Jeremiah McKenna is trapped. But trapped animals are the most dangerous kind. I could see McKenna's mind working, calculating angles, looking for an escape. His hand inched toward his gun. Marshal, I called out. These children need medical attention. They've been poisoned. I know, Stone called back. Doctors waiting in Millerville. We get them there quick. They might have a chance. McKenna's eyes fixed on my cabin with deadly intensity. If I can't have them, nobody can. His voice was different now. Not the smooth politician, but something raw and vicious. Santos, Jenkins, Murphy, burn it down, kill them all. 3 of his men grabbed torches and spurred their horses toward my cabin. The other marshals opened fire, but McKenna's Hell Riders were professionals. They scattered, using their horses as cover, returning fire as they moved. A bullet shattered my window, spraying glass across the floor. Another punched through the wall 6 inches from my head. Outside, men were screaming, horses were screaming, and the air filled with gunpowder smoke. Little Mary sat up in the middle of the chaos, her fever-bright eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. The angels are coming, she said in that voice that didn't belong to any 6-year-old. I can see them now. They're so beautiful. Thomas and Sarah joined in, their voices rising above the gunfire. We're angels now. We're angels now. We're angels now. A torch sailed through my broken window, landing on my wooden floor. Flames licked hungrily at the dry boards. Another torch hit my roof, and smoke started pouring through the rafters. I had maybe 30 seconds before the whole place went up like a matchbox. The children were convulsing again, lost in their poisoned fever dreams. Outside, the battle raged between McKenna's killers and the federal marshals. The vial of holy water felt warm in my palm. Sarah had said it could cure any poison if the person drinking it had faith enough. But there was only enough for 1 person, maybe 2 if I stretched it. 3 children dying, 1 vial, an impossible choice. The flames were spreading fast, eating their way across my floor like hungry demons. The flames reached the children first. I grabbed the water bucket and doused Sarah, then Thomas, then little Mary, but the fire was spreading faster than I could fight it. Smoke filled my lungs, and the heat pressed against us like the breath of hell itself. Outside, the gunfight raged on. Marshals against Hell Riders in a battle that would determine whether justice or evil ruled this corner of the territory. The angels are here, Mary whispered, her small hand reaching toward the flames. They're calling us home. I looked at the vial in my palm, then at the 3 dying children. Sarah met my eyes, reading the impossible choice written on my face. Give it to Mary, she said without hesitation. She's the youngest. She deserves a chance. No, Thomas gasped. Give it to Sarah. She saved us. She protected us. But Mary was already slipping away, her breathing shallow and rapid. The poison was winning, eating her alive from the inside. I uncorked the vial and tilted it toward her lips. Wait, Sarah's hand covered mine. There's something else. Something I never told you about the holy water. A beam crashed down from the ceiling, sending sparks flying. The fire was consuming my cabin, turning it into a funeral pyre. The Reverend said it don't work like medicine, Sarah continued, her voice steady despite the chaos. He said it only works if you share it, if you believe together, if you have faith as one. I stared at her, understanding flooding through me like cold water. All three of you, together. She nodded. We've been saying we're angels because we've been praying to die together, pure and clean. Maybe this is God's way of answering. Thomas crawled closer, his face streaked with tears. Do you think it'll work? I think faith moves mountains, I said, dividing the precious liquid into 3 equal drops. And right now, we need it to move poison. Each child took their share on their tongue. For a moment, nothing happened. The fire roared around us, the gunshots continued outside, and death pressed close on every side. Then Mary's convulsion stopped. Her eyes cleared, losing that fever-bright glaze. Thomas sat up straighter, his breathing easing. Sarah's grip on my hand grew stronger. I can feel it, Mary whispered. The poison's going away. A bullet punched through the wall near my head. Outside I heard McKenna screaming orders, his voice raw with desperation. The marshals were closing in, but his hell riders were fighting like cornered wolves. We gotta get out of here, I said, hefting my rifle. This whole place is coming down. I kicked open my back door and we stumbled into the desert night. The stars were coming out, brilliant and cold above the chaos. 50 yards away, Marshal Stone had McKenna pinned behind a water trough, trading shots while his men circled. There! McKenna spotted us through the smoke. Kill them! Kill them all! 2 hell riders turned their guns our way. I pushed the children behind a pile of rocks and returned fire, my shots echoing across the wasteland. One man fell, clutching his shoulder, the other dove for cover. Stay down, I told the children, but when I looked back they were standing. All 3 of them, holding hands, their faces peaceful as Sunday morning. We ain't afraid anymore, Sarah said. The poison's gone. The fear's gone with it. Little Mary stepped forward, her voice carrying clear across the battlefield. Jeremiah McKenna, God sees what you've done. God knows your sins. The gunfire stopped. Every man on both sides turned to stare at this slip of a girl facing down the most feared cattle baron in the territory. McKenna rose from behind the water trough, his pale eyes fixed on Mary with murderous intent. You little witch! You should have died quiet! He raised his gun, aiming at her heart. Marshal Stone's rifle boomed. McKenna spun around, his own shot going wild, and crashed to the ground with a hole through his chest. His pearl-handled revolvers fell into the dust, never to be drawn again. The remaining Hell Riders threw down their weapons. The battle was over. But Mary wasn't finished. She walked to where McKenna lay bleeding, looked down at him with eyes older than her years. We forgive you, she said simply. Even for what you done to us, we forgive you. McKenna's eyes widened. He tried to speak, blood bubbling from his lips, but no words came. Then his head fell back, and Jeremiah McKenna breathed his last under a sky full of stars. Marshal Stone holstered his rifle and walked over to us. Those children need a doctor. No, Sarah said quietly. We're healed now. The holy water washed us clean. And looking at them, their clear eyes, their steady breathing, the way they stood without fear, I believed her. The poison was gone. The sickness had fled. They were children again, not victims. Behind us, my cabin collapsed in a shower of sparks and flame. Everything I owned in this world was burning, but somehow I didn't care. I'd found something worth more than possessions, more valuable than gold. I'd found redemption in the desert, carried in the faith of 3 children who'd chosen to become angels rather than remain victims. The marshals rounded up the surviving Hell Riders and prepared to transport them to territorial prison. Marshal Stone offered to take the children to safety, to find them proper homes with good families. What about you, Ezra? Sarah asked. What will you do now? I looked at the ruins of my cabin, then at the 3 children who taught me the true meaning of faith. I reckon I'll build something new, something better, and if you'll have me, I'd like you 3 to help. Thomas grinned, the first real smile I'd seen from him. You mean it? You'd want us to stay? I can't think of anything I'd want more. We walked away from the burning cabin together. 4 souls who'd found each other in the darkest of places. Behind us, the flames reached toward heaven, carrying the smoke of our old lives up to the stars, and somewhere in that smoke, I swear I heard the whisper of angels. The ranch we built on the ashes of my old cabin became known throughout the territory as Angel's Rest, not because of any divine visitation, but because of what happened there that night. The night 3 dying children chose faith over fear and found their healing in the most unlikely of places. Sarah McKenna became Sarah Blackwood when I adopted all 3 children as my own. She grew into a strong woman who ran the ranch with wisdom beyond her years. Thomas became the finest horse trainer in Arizona Territory, gentle with broken animals because he understood what it meant to be broken himself. And Mary. Sweet Mary grew up to be a teacher, sharing her gift for seeing angels in the darkest places. They never spoke of their time with Jeremiah McKenna except to say that forgiveness had set them free. The territorial newspapers called McKenna's death the end of an era, the triumph of law over lawlessness. But I knew better. It was the triumph of faith over fear, of love over hatred. Sometimes, on clear desert nights when the stars shine bright as diamonds, visitors to Angel's Rest claim they can hear children's voices on the wind, whispering about angels. The locals say it's just the desert playing tricks, but I know the truth. Angels don't just live in heaven. Sometimes they walk among us, wearing the faces of children who refuse to let evil define them. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they'll teach you that the greatest miracle isn't rising from the dead. It's learning how to truly live. The holy water ran out that night, but the faith it awakened burned eternal.